This is my horse story, and it all started in kindergarten on those blue bouncy rubber horses that you could ride. And I couldn't get enough of it, and I never wanted to get off of them, and I always wanted to be first in line, but it hardly ever worked out that way. It continued on until I was about 3 years old, and my mother signed me up for riding lessons on this bay mare named Babe. And we hit it off, and the horse bug had bit, and I never went back. But as life would have it, my parents got divorced when I was 4 years old, and so the horses went on standby, and I didn't see horses or touch them or hear them or breathe them like I was supposed to and I knew I needed to. And they always seemed to be just out of reach. So in elementary school, I took to acting like a horse, and I would play around, and I would neigh, and I would whinny, and I would gallop around in the grass. And I remember my mother used to get mad at me because I'd come home and my clothes would be all stained with grass. And apparently in school, running around on all fours and neighing like a horse is not encouraged. So I was an outsider and an outcast, and nobody wanted to be my friend because I was weird and I was different, and nobody understood me. But that was fine. I preferred being by myself anyways. So my father sent me to a horse camp for a little while, for a week during a summer, one year. And I rode this little Appaloosa named Tiny. He was the sweetest thing, and he was the ugliest horse, and he was the typical broomtail Appaloosa that nobody likes and everybody hears about. But he was my savior, and he was the only thing good about that horse camp anyways. And I spent every waking moment, if I wasn't riding him, I was grooming him. Well, the horse camp went away, and no ponies for months and months, and those months turned into years. And finally, on my 12th birthday, my grandfather bought me my first horse. He was a little sorrel gelding of unknown breed. He was about 33 years old when we bought him. And he was the most beautiful creature I'd ever seen in my life, and I couldn't wait to have a lot of adventures with him, and I wanted to ride him. So we did English riding lessons, and I jumped him, and I did dressage, but I got tired of 15 and 20 meter circles, and I wanted something more. So I stopped my riding lessons after a year or two, and I rode him bareback with a halter, and I couldn't get enough of it. I wanted to be a cowgirl. I wanted to ride Western and run barrels. But that wasn't in the game plan because I was at an English barn. So that was on hold for the moment. A couple years after that, Rawhide blew out the candles on his 38th birthday cake. Carrot cake, of course. He was 38 that year. And that was also the year that I was informed of an accident Rawhide had had when I was not at the ranch. The veterinarian said that there was nothing that he could do for 4 torn suspensor tendons on a 38-year-old gelding. So just like that, the first love of my life was gone forever. And I didn't take that too well. I started doing really bad in school, and no amount of it talking to me or yelling at me or anything could get me out of the hole that I had dug myself into. So I started going to this horse camp where it was every Saturday, $25 to ride that day, and we did pole bending and barrel racing and gymkhana, and I loved it. And on Sundays, the day after, depending on how much work you had done the day before, you could end up going on a trail ride. Well, I worked my butt off for a while, but I only ended up going on about 4 trail rides in those 2-year span, but that was okay. It was worth the while. After that, I left there and became a professional pooper scooper and a exercise rider at this horse show barn for Western pleasure and trail horses. And that was when I realized that I didn't really much care for the show ring bling or the glitz and the glitter. And show horses, the only thing I liked about them was that they were pretty, but other than that, that's where it stopped. So I worked there, and the owner knew I wasn't really into showing her horses. So she put me in charge of this little quarter horse mare she had on her property. And this mare was vile, and she was vicious, and she didn't like anyone, and her owners had moved out of state and left her behind, but they were still paying for feed for her. But she would kick, and she would pin her ears, and she would chomp her teeth at you. So I would just stick my tongue out at her and walk away mad. And my grandfather warned me that mares were no good, and that's just how it was. But every time I rode this mare, she would crow hop and she would buck and she would throw a fit and she'd toss her head around, and I'd get angry with her and I'd yell at her and I'd tell her to knock it off, and she never did. But then the day came that she was for sale, and I tried to act like I didn't care, but I really did, and I knew I'd miss her when she was gone. So we had a lot of people interested in her because of her breeding and her registry and what was on her papers. But nobody came out and nobody was really interested in her because she was too small. She was about 14 hands, fine-boned little mare. So I came home from school one day to go work, and the big red bow was on this little red mare, and she was mine. They had given her to me, and I had never been happier. I actually had a horse again. I had some belonging. I had some purpose and some drive to what I was doing. So I started barrel racing on my little red mare, and I had dreams of the NFR, and I couldn't wait to take it to the next level. And the second barrel race I ever ran with her, we got first place out of everyone there. And I was really excited to have won that money and to have been there, and for her to have done that was amazing to me. It was we had come a long way at that point. But I got a real job, and wasn't able to barrel race anymore with her. And it made me sad, but because I got that job, I had a little bit of extra money laying around, so I was looking for a second horse. And this horse just kind of came out of nowhere, and he was plopped into my lap. He was given to me for free, and he's a Bay, Tennessee walking horse gelding. He came with the name Dave, and I didn't think that was appropriate for any horse, so I renamed him. Actually, the name just popped into my head one day. It was Eli. I walked out of the tack room, and I was like, Eli, I'm going to call you Eli. And it has biblical meaning, and it means to be uplifted. And I think I've definitely been uplifted with him, and Honey and Rawhide have been in my life. I don't think I could be any luckier to be able to provide care for these two horses. But when I brought Eli home, Honey wasn't happy, and she'd make these ugly dinosaur faces, and she'd make these ugly dinosaur sounds, and she'd be really angry, and she wanted nothing to do with him, and all he wanted was to be accepted. But she kept turning around and trying to kick him, and I realized then that me and this Tennessee walking horse had a lot in common from when I was going through school. I was looking for that acceptance, but couldn't find it, even though we weren't that different. So I sat Honey Bear down, and I told her that she needs to get over it because he's staying, and she would still be my number one. She's still my girl, and nothing could change what all we've been through together in the past almost 2 years now. It'll be 2 years in September. We've been through a lot. We've moved a lot of different places. I've worked a lot of different places with her. I've trained her myself, so it was definitely a journey for her and I know it was a big change for her to have this random horse come walking into her life that I was holding, and I know she understood that, and she just didn't want anything to do with him because he had come in and ruined her herd. She had split them apart, so she thought. But she eventually warmed up to him, and he warmed up to her, and I can turn them out together, and they play, and they roam, and they do what they do, and now we're just a big, happy family, and I wouldn't have it any other way, and I can't wait for our next adventure.
We carry on when our lives come undone. We carry on, 'cause there's promise in the morning sun. We carry on as the dark surrenders to the dawn. We were born to overcome. We carry on beyond the picket fences and the old wells, the happy endings and the fairy tales is the reality of shattered lives and broken dreams.